The mortgage collapse in the US housing market just got even worse in 2023, with mortgage purchase applications crashing by an unbelievable 41% year over year, down to the lowest level in 28 years, even lower than what occurred during the last crash after 2008, indicating that the spring 2023 housing market is going to be an absolute ghost town. We're going to have empty open houses. We're going to have desperate sellers feverishly trying to cut the price, and we know this because according to the January 2023 Realtors Confidence Survey by the NAR, only 29% of home purchases last month were made in cash, meaning that the remaining 71% needed a mortgage to facilitate the transaction, meaning that this mortgage collapse being worse than 2008 is a huge problem for the US housing market, particularly in certain cities and states where the buyer demand has already collapsed significantly. The more that inventory goes up and that buyers drop out of the market, the more pressure there will be for prices to decline. We are not even close to a bottom in this market yet, especially with mortgage rates now going back up. Mortgage rates went down by a little bit over the last month and a half. Well, they are now on the rise again, up to 6.6% in the latest survey from Freddie Mac, and they could go even higher in future weeks to 6.8 or 6.9%. And these escalating mortgage rates combined with home prices, which are still near a record level, the prices have come down a bit, but not by enough, means that the regular home buyer in America is still fundamentally priced out of the market. And we won't see a bottom in this housing market. It won't look like a good time to buy for you until we see both home prices and mortgage rates go down. When both home prices and mortgage rates go down, it will bring down this typical house payment in America, which is now around $2,500 a month for a new home buyer. That's double what it was in 2020, and it's also almost double what it was in 06-07 before the 2008 crash. We need to see this line go down significantly, the house payment line, before it is a good time to buy. Now, there's a lot of people out there, everyone, who say that we're not going to see that house payment line go down. They say prices aren't going to go down. A lot of realtors and investors say this because their argument is inventory is low on the US housing market, and as a result, prices won't go down. And we can see there is some legitimacy to this claim. According to the US Census Bureau, there was only about 720,000 houses available for sale at the end of 2022. But what I want you all to pay attention to is the bar right next to it. As you can see, folks, there's about 14 million houses that are sitting vacant on the US housing market, not for sale, which shows you that actually there's tons of inventory in the US housing market ready to be released onto the market. And if only like 5% of all those people who own vacant property, like investors or second and third home buyers, if only 5% of them decide to sell and cash out at the top, that would instantly double inventory on the US housing market, and suddenly no one anymore would be talking about low inventory. And besides, everyone, inventory is not low in a lot of different states. We talked about Utah before, but what about Arizona? Inventory is up 150% year over year in Arizona. It's up 150% in Idaho. It's up 140% in Washington. It's up by 144% in Tennessee and 100% in North Carolina. Now we're starting to see that inventory pile up in North Carolina in cities like Charlotte, in Raleigh, in Greensboro, and Winston-Salem. We're just starting to see that inventory pile up, and we're seeing a big reduction in home buyer demand. On this graph, you can see the 15 metros in America with the biggest collapse in pending home sales over the last year. And what do you see? Charlotte is number 2 at minus 54%. Winston-Salem and Greensboro are there at minus 47%. And you can see suddenly a lot of markets in the Southeast, like a Fayetteville, Arkansas, a Jacksonville, Florida, a Cape Coral, Florida, a Deltona, Florida, are suddenly struggling to find home buyers. Moreover, the markets that are already crashing, like San Jose, Austin, Las Vegas, and Phoenix, buyer demand is down 40 to 50% in these markets as well, which is an indication that many home buyers in the US housing market are not ready to just suddenly jump back in when they see home prices go down and inventory go up. In fact, quite the contrary in many situations, because as buyers in certain cities see prices go down, the FOMO just completely goes away. It's at this point, everyone, that we need to talk about the economy, and particularly the recession. Do you all remember the recession that everyone was talking about in 2022 and that a lot of people have forgotten about? Well, that recession, in my opinion, is still coming. And I'm going to show you some historical data right now that tells you when it could be coming. And to see what I'm talking about, take a look at this graph where we're looking at home sales in America going back to 1969. And there's been 4 distinct peaks in home sales over the last 50 to 60 years. And what do you notice, everyone, is that after each of the previous 3 peaks, we had a recession following those peaks. In 1980 to 1982, we had a double dip recession. 1990, 1991, we had the Gulf War recession. And then, of course, from 07 to 09, we had the great financial crisis, indicating that the collapse in home sales we're seeing today is telling you that a recession is around the corner. And it takes about 2 years historically to go from peak home sales to the start of a recession, which suggests that we could be in the start of an official recession by the middle of 2023. And if we do have a recession, which I think is a pretty high likelihood, that's going to make all the metrics of the housing market look even worse. It's going to suppress buyer demand even more. It's going to cause inventory to go up by more. It's going to cause prices to go down. And oh yeah, it's also going to cause foreclosures. So we haven't seen the foreclosures really yet. In fact, the foreclosure rate is near an all-time low right now. However, that's something that's going to change very soon, because data from the Federal Housing Administration is showing that there's been a big increase in the delinquency rate on FHA loans. Specifically, the 30-day delinquency rate over the last year has gone up from 3.8% all the way to 5.6%. And when you see that 30-day delinquency rate going up really fast, that means it's possible we could see increases in 60 and 90-day delinquencies soon, which would then start to initiate foreclosure filings. So we're going to likely have an increase in foreclosures this year. We're likely going to also have a recession based on the historical data, just as the mortgage market has collapsed for home buyers. So what does all of that mean for you out there, for someone who's either a home buyer or an investor trying to decide when to buy? Well, a big metric that I'm looking at to tell me whether a market is a good place to buy and when the bottom is going to be is the relationship between the cost to buy a house compared to the cost to rent an apartment. And really what you want to watch out for, everyone, in your housing market is if this orange line, the cost to buy, is significantly above the cost to rent, like it is in Phoenix. It's 42% more expensive to buy, $800 more per month. That's a signal that you probably don't want to buy, right? Because if you're a renter, it makes more financial sense for you to rent. What about in a market like Charlotte that we talked about before? Well, you can see in Charlotte, historically, it's more expensive to rent than it is to buy, but that is no longer the case due to higher home prices and higher mortgage rates. It's now more expensive to buy in Charlotte. As it is in a market like Los Angeles, everyone, check this out. It costs $5,000 a month to buy a house in LA in terms of mortgage payments, insurance, and property taxes compared to around $3,000 a month to rent an apartment. That's $2,200 more per month to buy if you're an LA Orange County home buyer. And this is simple math, everyone. Home buyers aren't dumb. They look at the mortgage rates, they see the home prices, they do the calculation, and they realize it makes no sense for them to buy. Regardless of what Wall Street investors try to spin, regardless of what realtors are trying to spin, who are trying to say that now is a good time to buy, the regular home buyer knows that that's not true. And so long as the regular home buyer is financially incentivized to rent instead of buy, we're not going to see a meaningful recovery in the housing market. Now, before signing off, everyone, I'm going to do a quick rapid fire round. I haven't done this in a while. I'm going to run through a bunch of housing markets really fast in terms of how much the inventory has gone up and how much these housing markets are going to get hurt by this mortgage collapse. And basically, these are the markets where prices are likely to go down the most over the next 6 to 9 months. It's really going to be the markets in red on this map. One of them would be Nashville. Inventory in Nashville is already up 300% year over year, just as we're walking into this mortgage collapse getting even worse. Nashville is a housing market I would definitely not buy in right now. The same goes for Dallas. Inventory in Dallas is up up 200% year over year. It's going to climb even further over the next 6 months as the mortgage collapse plays out. And this is a housing market that somehow I hear a lot of people saying is recovering and that the buyers are coming back in. That is not true in Dallas. Nor is it true in a market like Riverside, California. The inventory in Riverside's up 124% year over year. This is a place that's no longer receiving an influx of home buyers from LA and thus is going to have real issues going forward in 2023. And if you guys want to look at this map yourself, you can go to www.reventure.app and create a free account when you're prompted. You're gonna have access to all this inventory data and much, much more. It's gonna be free for a limited time. But folks, we gotta talk about also some of the areas in blue here. Some of the areas in blue, primarily in the Northeast, in Midwest, like New York, like Syracuse, like Chicago, like Hartford. The inventory in these housing markets is still very, very low, and the buyer demand is holding up better in these metros in blue than it is almost anywhere else in America. And this is still one of the big mysteries of the 2023 housing market. Actually, the hottest housing markets and the strongest ones are the ones in the Midwest and Northeast Rust Belt that seemingly everyone is leaving. These are the ones where the buyers are still buying at 6.5% mortgage rates. And that suggests to me that we are seeing a shift in migration and where people are moving in America. The fact that inventory is up 200% year over year in Tampa, but is down in Syracuse, suggests to me that fewer people are moving to Tampa, more people are staying in Syracuse. This same migration shift occurred at almost exactly the same time in the last housing crash around 06-07. We saw a big reduction in people moving to the south around 06-07. We saw a big reduction in people moving into the west. And we saw the Midwest and the Northeast do a lot better in that last housing crash. And I think those areas of the country are going to do much better again. However, that doesn't mean you should necessarily buy in the Northeast or Midwest. Because if you go to a housing market like Boston, the typical cost to buy a house in terms of your monthly payments, mortgage, taxes, insurance is around $4,000 a month across the Boston metro, while rent is around $2,900 a month. So yes, it's expensive to rent in Boston, but it's $1,000 more per month to buy. So that suggests to me that we're going to see the buyer demand in Boston taper off and that the inventory is going to start going up in 2023. Same thing in New York, which includes New York City, Westchester, Long Island, Northern Jersey. The cost to buy is around $4,000 a month, while the cost to rent is $3,000 a month. So it's $900 more expensive to buy in the New York metro when it was historically actually more expensive to rent. So this is a signal that the New York housing market, despite kind of holding on and not crashing yet, is going to have some issues as 2023 progresses. That's it for today, everyone. This is Nick from Reventure Consulting. Remember, go to www.reventure.app and create a free account to access this data for yourself.